The healing chamber of the Virilan Empire was silent, except for the soft hum of dying energy crystals, their light flickering like candles fighting against the wind. On a floating bed of shimmering metal lay Princess Elira, her silver skin pale, her eyes closed, her breath faint. Like a whisper at the edge of death, 17 alien healers surrounded her, each one from a different world, their bodies glowing in strange colors, their hands moving in patterns older than any empire. They spoke words of power, sang in tones that made the air vibrate. But nothing worked. The light around the princess dimmed. The crystals cracked, and one by one, the healers stopped, their faces heavy with failure. At the end of the room, the Empress stood tall and quiet. Her 4 eyes full of tears she refused to let fall. Her daughter, her only heir, had been fading for weeks, and not a single healer from the galaxy's greatest worlds could save her. When the last healer lowered his head, his tendrils trembling, his voice broke. "Your Majesty, her spirit rejects our energy. Nothing more can be done." The Empress did not speak. She only turned her gaze toward the stars beyond the glass dome. The endless darkness outside seemed to echo her grief. In the far corner of the chamber stood a human, a quiet maintenance technician named Daniel. He had been ordered to repair the failing consoles, clean the energy conduits, and stay silent. Humans were new to the galaxy, newcomers from a forgotten world that most advanced races ignored. They were not scientists or healers, they were laborers. Hands for hire, minds for small tasks. Daniel knew that, and he kept to himself. But as he worked on a console near the princess's bed, he felt something strange. A soft vibration moved through the floor, through the air, into his chest. It wasn't the hum of a machine. It was a pulse like a heartbeat. He looked up. The monitors flickered, showing strange readings. Energy waves rising and falling in rhythm with his pulse, not the princess's. He frowned. Checked the cables again, but the signal only grew stronger. The healers shouted, confused, thinking their instruments were breaking down. Daniel stepped closer to fix the display, and as he reached forward to stabilize the panel, his hand brushed against Elira's chest. For a single second, everything stopped. The air froze. The lights went out, and silence filled the chamber like the breath before a storm. Then the world exploded in light. A wave of golden energy burst from the bed, throwing the healers backward. The cracked crystals repaired themselves, glowing brighter than before. The monitors screamed with new readings, life signs. Strong and clear, Elira's chest rose with a deep breath, her body glowing faintly, her eyes fluttering open. Daniel stumbled back in shock, his heart racing. The Empress gasped. Stepping forward, "Elira?" The princess blinked weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "Mother." The healers stared in disbelief. 17 masters of galactic healing, defeated by one touch from a species they considered primitive. One of them shouted, "Contamination!" He touched the royal vessel. Guards rushed in, grabbing Daniel by the arms, forcing him to the floor. He tried to explain. "I didn't mean to. I was only fixing the console." But no one listened. They dragged him toward the exit. The Empress stood still, torn between protocol and the miracle she had just seen. "Wait," she said softly, her voice trembling. Her pulse. It returned after he touched her, the healers argued. Voices overlapping. "Impossible," said one. "Human energy cannot merge with Virilan life forms." "It was an accident," said another. "A disruption, nothing more." But Elira's eyes were open now, her gaze following the human being taken away. "Mother," she whispered again, "bring him back." Her voice was weak but clear. The Empress froze, realizing her daughter's words were not random. She turned toward the guards, her tone sharp as a blade. "Stop." They froze in place, Daniel still held between them. Breathing hard, his hands shaking, the healers protested. But the Empress raised her hand, silencing them. "Release him," she ordered. "No one touches him until I say so." Daniel looked around. Confused and frightened, he could still feel warmth spreading from his fingertips. He looked down and saw faint golden lines glowing across his skin, like energy veins pulsing under his flesh. He quickly hid his hand behind his back, afraid someone might see. The Empress stepped closer to the bed, her voice gentle but filled with command. "Human, what did you do?" Daniel shook his head. "Nothing, Your Majesty, I swear. I was only fixing the monitor," but even as he spoke, the crystals around the room continued to hum softly, each one glowing brighter whenever he breathed. The Empress glanced at her daughter, who now seemed more alive than she had in months. Her faint smile said what no healer could explain. The impossible had happened because of a human, and as Daniel was escorted out of the chamber under guard, whispers began spreading among the healers. Some called him cursed, others called him divine. But in the shadows of that glowing room, the Empress looked toward the stars and whispered to herself, 17 alien healers failed, and yet one human touch changed everything. The palace of the Virilan Empire had not slept that night. Whispers traveled through every corridor, through every hall of crystal and light, from servants to generals, from guards to nobles. Everyone spoke of the same thing. A human, a creature of flesh and carbon, had done what 17 alien healers could not. In the Empress's private chamber, the Council of Healers stood in silence, their faces filled with fear and pride clashing together. One said, "It must be a trick, Majesty. Humans cannot create healing resonance," another hissed. It was contamination. His primitive cells corrupted her energy flow. But the Empress only stared at the glowing medical screen before her. Her daughter's heartbeat, once fading, was now strong, steady, beautiful. 17 healers failed you, she said coldly, her voice quiet but sharp. And now a human brings her back with a single touch. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed afraid to move outside. Daniel sat alone in a locked holding room. His wrists were bound, his heart heavy, his mind racing. He didn't understand what had happened. He had touched her only for a second, and yet that second changed everything. He looked down at his hands. Strange golden marks still glowed faintly under his skin. They pulsed in rhythm with something distant, something alive. He pressed his hand against his chest, and for a moment he felt it. A heartbeat that wasn't his own, soft but real, echoing from somewhere far away. He whispered to himself, "What is happening to me?" Then the door hissed open and 2 royal guards entered. "On your feet, human," one ordered. "The Empress commands your presence." Daniel rose slowly, fear and confusion mixing in his eyes. He followed them through long corridors made of living crystal. Every wall shimmered, and he could feel the vibrations of the palace, like the whole place was breathing. They entered a wide chamber filled with golden light. Princess Elira lay on a floating bed, awake now, her pale face brighter, her eyes glowing softly when she saw Daniel. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Leave us," the Empress ordered, and the guards bowed. Stepping out of the room, Daniel hesitated, then bowed clumsily. "Your Majesty, I didn't mean any harm," he said quickly. The Empress studied him closely. "You are human, are you not? From the world called Earth?" "Yes, Majesty," he replied. She walked around him slowly, like a scientist studying a strange creature. "No human has ever touched Virilan royalty," she said softly. "And lived." Daniel's throat went dry. "Then why am I still alive?" The Empress turned toward her daughter. "Because my child told me to spare you." Elira's voice was weak but calm. "He is the reason I breathe." The Empress's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain what you felt, daughter." Elira reached for her chest, her fingers brushing the same spot where Daniel had touched her. "When he reached me," she said slowly, "I felt warmth, not from light, not from energy, but from something deeper." She looked at Daniel, her gaze soft but filled with awe. It felt like life itself chose to return. Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do anything special," but the Empress interrupted. "Silence, human." She raised a glowing scanner and waved it across him. The device beeped, and strange readings appeared in the air. Patterns no alien life had ever shown. "His energy signature is undefined," one healer whispered, trembling. Another leaned closer. "It matches her frequency, partially bonded." The Empress's eyes widened. "Bonded? You mean—" "Yes," the healer interrupted. "Their energy waves are synchronized. It's impossible. But it's happening." Elira looked at Daniel with shock and wonder. "You're connected to me." Daniel stepped back. "That's not possible. I'm not anything special." The Empress's tone turned cold. "You are forbidden to touch her again, human. Do you understand?" Daniel nodded quickly, fear gripping him, but as he turned to leave, Elira reached out weakly, whispering, "Wait." Her hand brushed his wrist, just barely, and in that moment, the air filled with golden light again. The walls hummed, and every crystal in the room responded to their heartbeat. The healer screamed, "It's happening again!" Elira gasped, breathing faster, her energy levels rising beyond control. Daniel's veins glowed, golden lines racing up his arms and neck. He tried to pull away, but their hands seemed locked by something unseen. Then as suddenly as it began, the light faded. Elira slumped back, exhausted but alive. The Empress stared, her voice shaking for the first time. He stabilizes her. No one spoke for several seconds. The truth was clear without him. Elira would die, with him she lived. The Empress turned to the healers, her tone filled with authority. This stays secret, understood? The council must not hear of it, she looked at Daniel, her expression torn between fear and gratitude. You are forbidden to leave this palace, human, she said. From this moment, you belong to us. Daniel felt a chill run through him. Belong to them, he looked once more at the sleeping princess, her peaceful face glowing faintly. Something deep inside him whispered that this was only the beginning. As the guards escorted him away, the Empress watched him go, her eyes dark with worry. 17 alien healers failed, she murmured, and yet a human may have changed the fate of our entire race. But high above the palace, in the shadowed towers of the Galactic Council, a transmission had already been sent. A single message blinking red across the void. Subject, human anomaly detected. Possible threat to galactic order. The next morning, the entire palace shimmered with silence. Servants moved quietly, healers whispered in fear, and guards stood alert at every corridor. No one dared speak the human's name out loud. But everyone knew. Something impossible had happened inside those walls deep beneath the palace. Daniel sat in a containment chamber surrounded by shimmering energy fields. He had not slept, not eaten, not spoken. His mind was full of flashes, glowing lights, Elira's face, the sound of her heartbeat echoing in his skull like distant thunder. Every few seconds his hand would glow faintly. The golden veins pulsed under his skin, growing brighter whenever he thought of her. He whispered to himself, "Why me? What am I becoming?" Above him in the royal chamber, Elira stirred awake again. Her breathing was steady, but her mind was restless. She could feel Daniel, even though he was far below. When she closed her eyes, she could sense his heartbeat, like a drum guiding her back from the darkness. It was as if part of her soul had reached out and tied itself to his. The Empress stood beside her bed, watching the strange readings on the monitors. The healers bowed low, terrified to speak. "Explain this," the Empress demanded, her tone cold and sharp. One of the healers trembled. "Majesty, the human's biofield continues to stabilize her life force. Even at distance, they remain linked. It defies every law of resonance." The Empress's voice softened. "So he keeps her alive. Even now." Another healer nodded nervously. "If he dies, she dies too." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Empress whispered, "Then we protect him, whatever the cost." But outside the palace, the galaxy had already heard the rumor. A whisper had spread like wildfire. A human had healed the unhealable princess. To some, it was a miracle. To others, a threat. In the high spire of the Galactic Council, the ancient species gathered. Holograms of shimmering energy filled the hall. The council master, an elder of the crystalline Valoth, spoke with a voice that shook the chamber. "This cannot continue. Humanity was allowed to exist under supervision only," he said. "They were not supposed to possess energy manipulation of any kind." A reptilian delegate hissed. "If a human can bond with royal Virulon blood, then their species carries something ancient, something forbidden." Another voice whispered, "Terminate the human. Silence the Empire before this spreads." The master nodded. "Prepare the purge order. Erase this human anomaly before the galaxy begins to ask questions." Back in the palace, Daniel awoke to a loud humming sound. The lights flickered red and the walls began to tremble. Guards shouted outside his cell, and one of them screamed, "Council drones! They've breached orbit!" Daniel stood, his pulse racing before he could react. The energy field around him cracked and shattered in a burst of golden light. Every sensor in the room overloaded, screens melting into sparks. When the guards rushed in, they froze. The human was standing in the middle of the storm, untouched. His eyes glowed faint gold, his body surrounded by waves of invisible force. He looked terrified, but the energy didn't harm him. It obeyed him. The Empress received the alarm and turned pale. She ran to the control deck shouting, "Protect the human! Do not let the council take him." But it was already too late outside the palace dome. Massive council drones descended from the sky like black meteors. their weapons glowing blue. Elira woke suddenly, gasping. Her heart pounded violently, and she screamed, "They're hurting him!" The healers rushed to her side, but the golden light inside her chest erupted like fire. The walls shook, every crystal in the palace vibrating to the same rhythm. Daniel's heartbeat. In the containment room, Daniel felt his strength vanish. Images flashed in his mind. Elira's face, the Empress's command, and the metallic voice of the council drones calling him subject of termination. He fell to his knees, holding his head, whispering, "No more." And then something inside him answered. A deep voice, ancient and powerful, not human, not alien, but something older. A whisper. "You are the bridge, the forgotten spark." Awaken, the chamber exploded in golden fire. Every guard was thrown back, but none were harmed. The energy wrapped around Daniel like wings of light. When he opened his eyes again, his fear was gone, only calm remained. He looked up as the ceiling split open, revealing the sky full of council drones. With a quiet voice he said, "Stay away from her." The air shimmered, and the drones stopped mid-flight, their weapons powered down one by one. Then, without warning, they fell from the sky like stones, crashing into the royal courtyard below. The palace guards watched in shock. The healers whispered prayers. The Empress stood frozen as her monitors showed impossible readings, energy output beyond galactic scale, from a single human. Daniel collapsed, the golden light fading, his body trembling with exhaustion. The Empress arrived moments later, staring at the destruction. Her voice shook as she whispered to her guards, "Take him to the princess." Quickly, as they carried Daniel toward Elira's chamber, she could already feel his presence approaching. Her heart steadied, her breathing slowed when he entered. The glow around both of them merged into one. Golden threads stretched between them like strands of light, weaving two souls into one heartbeat. The Empress looked on in silence, realizing the truth. This was not healing, it was bonding. Something no healer, no scientist, no god had ever achieved. A human had touched the fabric of life itself. Outside, the council's fleet began to retreat, afraid of what they had awakened. And in the quiet after the chaos, Elira opened her eyes, looked at Daniel and whispered, "What are you?" Daniel, barely conscious, managed to answer, "I don't know, but something inside me remembers." The council summoned the Empress under the weight of stars. Across the vastness of space, her flagship glided toward the Grand Assembly Ring, a colossal structure that circled a dying white sun. It was where rulers were judged and sometimes erased. The Empress stood at the viewing port, her four eyes fixed on the silent horizon. Beside her, Daniel sat chained, hands glowing faintly under restraint cuffs designed to suppress energy. The guards avoided his gaze. They had seen what happened to the drones, and none dared to meet his eyes for too long. "You don't have to come," Daniel said quietly. The Empress turned to him, her voice low but calm. "You are bound to my daughter, human, and the council believes that makes you their property." He frowned. "Property?" She nodded slowly. "They think they can study you, control you, or destroy you if they must." Daniel looked out at the stars, whispering, "They can try." When the ship docked, the enormous chamber of the Galactic Council lit up with shifting colors. Representatives of 100 species glowed like constellations suspended in air. At the center rose the High Conductor, a being made entirely of energy, his voice vibrating through the hall like thunder and wind. "Empress Virala," he began, "you stand accused of withholding information regarding a biological anomaly, a human capable of manipulating life energy." The Empress bowed her head slightly. "He is not a weapon. He is a person who saved my daughter's life." The conductor's tone hardened, and by doing so, he has disrupted the equilibrium of existence itself. Murmurs filled the chamber, some of fear, some of anger, some of envy. A cold-blooded reptilian lord hissed, 17 healers failed where this primitive succeeded. If one human can do this, what happens when 1,000 awaken? Another voice, sharp and metallic, echoed, "The humans were meant to remain dormant, their power buried for a reason." Daniel lifted his head, confused. "Dormant? What do you mean?" The conductor's light flared brighter. "Silence, human." But the Empress raised her hand. "No, you will answer him." The conductor paused, then spoke with reluctant weight. "Long ago, before our empires, your kind walked the stars. They were creators, manipulators of the living energy we now call life force. But they fell. consumed by their own fire. We buried their worlds and erased their name. The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel's breath caught. You're saying humanity wasn't new here? We were first. The conductor's voice trembled. And you were forbidden to rise again. At that moment, Elira's hologram appeared in the chamber, her image flickering as she forced the connection from her sickbed back on the homeworld. Her voice was weak but burning with defiance. He is no weapon. He is life. He saved me when all your gods could not. The council erupted in chaos, voices overlapping, energy surging. The conductor struck the ground. Enough! This human is to be taken for containment. If he resists, he is to be terminated. Guards advanced toward Daniel. Weapons drawn, the Empress stepped forward, spreading her arms. Touch him, and you declare war on the Virellan Empire. But before she could say more, one of the healers, once jealous, now trembling, stepped out of line and pointed at Daniel. He carries the spark, Majesty. The ancient curse. You cannot protect him. Daniel's cuffs began to glow as his heartbeat accelerated. He could feel Elira's fear across the stars. Her pain, her call for him. He whispered under his breath. I won't let them hurt her. The air changed. A low vibration ran through the chamber. Lights flickered, and every being present felt their life energy shift as though gravity itself had turned. Daniel stood slowly, the chain snapping like paper. His eyes burned gold, but this time the glow was darker. Deeper alive, the conductor shouted, Contain him! But it was already too late. Golden light poured from Daniel's hands, not as fire or weapon, but as resonance, waves of pure life that filled the entire hall. Every dying creature in the council felt their cells regenerate, their failing organs heal, their hearts steady. The healers gasped, staring at their hands glowing with the same light. This is impossible, one whispered. He's healing us. Daniel's voice carried through the chamber, calm but powerful. You erased us because you feared what we could do, but I don't want power. I just want her safe. He looked at the conductor, whose form now trembled, no longer in control. You called it forbidden, Daniel said softly. I call it human. The energy slowly faded, the golden light sinking back into his body like a breath drawn inward. The council sat in silence, shaken, awed, and terrified. For the first time in centuries, the beings who ruled galaxies felt small. The conductor's voice returned, weak now. This cannot exist. Daniel looked up at him. Then you'll have to destroy the truth itself. The Empress placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Enough. We're leaving. No one dared stop them as the two walked out of the grand chamber. The counselors whispered among themselves, some with fear, some with reverence. The conductor turned to his guards, his voice trembling, Find the human's world, and make sure no more like him awaken. But even as those words left his mouth, the stars beyond the window began to flicker, not with explosions, but with light, golden light, one by one. Across distant colonies, humans began to stir in their sleep, dreaming the same dream, of touching the stars and feeling them answer back. The stars were no longer silent. Every communication array across the galaxy flickered with a strange pulse, a rhythm like a heartbeat, slow, deep, endless. The same rhythm that now echoed inside Daniel and Elira. They stood in the palace observatory, the universe reflected in the glass around them. Elira's skin shimmered with faint gold. Daniel's veins still glowed beneath the surface. When they stood close, the air itself trembled, as if reality was holding its breath. Since that day, Elira whispered, I feel what you feel. Daniel nodded, his voice quiet. When you're afraid, I can't breathe. They both fell silent, listening to the faint hum of their joined energy. It was beautiful and terrifying down below. The Empress spoke with her generals. Reports poured in, council fleets withdrawing, border empires collapsing in confusion and on distant worlds. Humans everywhere were awakening, miners, engineers, wanderers, each showing traces of the same golden light. The spark spreads, said a frightened advisor. The Empress closed her eyes. The galaxy is changing, but the peace did not last. High above the system, the Council's dreadnought Vigilant entered orbit. It was the size of a small moon, built to erase entire civilizations. The conductor had defied his own laws to bring it here. If the human spark could not be contained, it would be destroyed in the observatory. Alarms flared red, Elira gasped, clutching her chest. "They're here for you." Daniel turned toward the sky, feeling the presence of the dreadnought like a storm pressing down on his mind. He could almost hear the council's voice inside his head. Cold, mechanical, certain, terminate the anomaly. He stepped back, his body trembling as the golden light started to rise again. But Elira grabbed his hand. "If you fight them, they'll destroy you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "If I don't, they'll destroy everyone." Below them, the city lights dimmed as the dreadnought's main cannon charged. Energy gathered at its center, pure void energy capable of erasing a planet. The Empress shouted into the command channel, "All shields to maximum. Evacuate the lower districts." But every defense system overloaded instantly. Daniel felt Elira's fear burning through the bond. He turned to her, holding her face gently. "You brought me back from nothing," he whispered. "Now let me bring light to everything." The air rippled as he stepped forward. Golden fire rose from his body, wrapping him like armor made of stars. The chamber windows shattered, and Daniel floated upward. The Empress and Elira watched as he ascended through the broken glass, his silhouette shining against the endless dark. From the dreadnought, the conductor saw him coming, one human against a weapon that could end worlds. "Fire," he ordered. A beam of black energy lanced down, cutting through clouds and atmosphere. It struck Daniel head-on. For one breath, the world went white, then silence when the light cleared. Daniel was still there, the beam bent around him, its power dissolving into golden dust. He lifted his hand and the dust became light. Spreading outward in every direction, it didn't destroy. It healed. Ships that had been scarred from centuries of war repaired themselves. Planets once barren bloomed with new life. Even the dreadnought's dying crew felt warmth instead of pain. The conductor stared in horror. "He is rewriting matter. He is becoming the source itself." Elira, watching from the palace, felt the connection surge through her heart. Her eyes glowed brighter than the sun, and her voice carried across the link between them. "Daniel, you are not alone." Her energy joined his. Two lights, human and Virellan, merged into one blinding radiance. Their voices echoed through the void together. No more fear. No more walls. The dreadnought cracked apart, but instead of exploding, it turned to light. Golden waves spread through hyperspace, touching every ship, every station, every living thing. Every being in the galaxy looked up as the same pulse moved through their bodies. One heartbeat, shared by all. When the brilliance faded, Daniel and Elira hovered above the palace, surrounded by drifting dust that shimmered like morning dew. The Empress fell to her knees, tears glistening. "What have you become?" Daniel's voice was soft, but it carried across worlds. "Something you all forgot," he said. "The spark that built the stars." The conductor's final transmission reached every corner of the galaxy before his form dissolved into the light. His last words were half fear, half awe. Humanity was never gone. The pulse of energy slowly faded, leaving a calm silence across the stars. Daniel descended back to the balcony. Weak but alive, Elira caught him as he fell, their hands still glowing faintly where they touched. "Is it over?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "It's only the beginning." High above them, the galaxies shimmered in golden threads, not as God's creations, but as echoes of human hands. And across 1,000 worlds, ancient ruins began to awaken, stone and metal pulsing with the same heartbeat that now lived in Daniel and Elira. The universe itself seemed to breathe again, and the legend spread from world to world. 17 alien healers failed, but a single human touch changed everything.